Hello and welcome to Re-enthused. Today we aren't talking about a specific machine, we're talking about almost a concept of a machine. This is of course the 3DO. In 1989, two engineers, Dave Needle and R.J. McCall, sketched out the outline for a new powerful CD-based console. They approached the CEO of Electronic Arts, Trip Hawkins, with the design and worked on ways to bring it to market. Hawkins was interested because the two engineers had a decent pedigree, having worked on both the Commodore Amiga and Atari Lynx, but he knew he didn't have the resources to bring them hardware to market. So in 1991 he founded the 3DO Interactive Multiplayer Company, and it would drive a new way to sell consoles. Nintendo and Sega had built the market up by designing and selling their consoles at a loss, well mostly anyway, expecting to make money on the license fees from publishers' games. This meant that consumers got the consoles cheaper, and this in turn drove more software sales, resulting in more profit. The flip side of this was that game publishers were expected to pay relatively high license fees to help the manufacturers recoup hardware development costs. Hawkins had a different way. Instead of making the hardware, they would approach other manufacturers and license out a common hardware platform. Multiple manufacturers would make machines based on this platform, and they would all be able to run the same software. 3DO would take a small license fee for the hardware license and a small license fee from game publishers. The upshot of this was that game publishers were interested due to the smaller license fee, but hardware was sold at a higher price because the manufacturers didn't have the safety net of software revenue. And what about those manufacturers? Well, that's where the 3DO story gets interesting. Hawkins approached a number of manufacturers to sell licenses, including Sega and Sony. Sega weren't interested in trusting another company's hardware design, plus they were unwilling to lose software revenue. Sony were busy making their own entry into the console world in the form of the PlayStation. The third company was the charm though. Panasonic was one of the biggest electronics companies in the world and saw the 3DO as a way to compete with Sony and their upcoming PlayStation. Hawkins approached a number of other companies, including Goldstar, Sanyo, Samsung, Toshiba, and even AT&T. Whilst all those companies bought licenses, only Goldstar and Sanyo released machines. AT&T had plans for a set-top box, but they never left the planning stage. The 3DO launched in October 1993. Due to several planning issues, including hardware and spec changes up to a few weeks before manufacturing began, the platform ended up releasing with just one game, Crash and Burn. Whilst more games did start arriving a few weeks after, it took the shine away from the release. A release that had already been affected by the high price of Panasonic's FZ1. At $699, it was substantially more expensive than competing machines. On top of that, the frequent design changes meant that Panasonic had only managed to manufacture a relatively small amount, meaning many shops only had one or two. A month later, the 3DO had only managed to sell 30,000 units, far below the expected amount. However, the later release in Japan did manage to shift 70,000, helped by having 6 titles at launch and a slightly lower price. In the end, the 3DO's claim of being the most advanced console on the market only lasted as long as the PlayStation and Saturn releases. Once they were out, it had no hope of competing. Even cheaper consoles from Goldstar and Sanyo couldn't help the 3DO hold on. When production was shut down, the 3DO company was ramping up for the second generation M2 console. This would address a number of issues in the original design. The 3DO company divested its hardware arm. The M2 technology was incorporated into a few multimedia devices, including systems for medicine, architecture and sales. Konami also used it in a few arcade machines. A number of prototypes and design samples exist of M2 consoles in the wild in varying levels of completeness. In 1996, 3DO shifted to becoming just a software house, releasing several multi-platform games before eventually declaring bankruptcy in 2007. The 3DO is largely declared a failure, but it was a brave attempt to revolutionise the way consoles were made and sold. It was also responsible for kickstarting several popular franchises, which later appeared on other platforms. And here we are with some of those machines. Not all of them. There are a few models, and some of them are hard to get hold of, like some of Goldstar's later models are quite hard to get hold of and go for fairly large prices. But here's a selection anyway. So yeah, here's the one that kind of really started it all. This is the Panasonic FZ1. And right here is its follow-up, the FZ10. I kind of prefer the FZ10. I've only recently just got this from Japan, and I like it. It's really nice. It's very compact. I think this would have been a bit of a hit when this had come out originally. So you can see these two of the flagship models when they first came out. They're quite bulky, much more fitting the appliance style of a lot of companies were going for at the time, but quite bulky for a console. So yeah, if we look at the front loader, obviously, nice big kind of actually slightly cheap looking buttons, I will say, and that's largely it for anything else really. On the back, we've got an expansion port. It's got an RF socket, which is certainly interesting. S-Video, that was a bit of a feature of quite a lot of the 3DO consoles, especially the Japanese-based ones, and also composites. This had a plethora of options to connect it to TVs. On the other hand, so the FZ10 is a much simpler design. It's a top loader. Got a couple of lights there just to show you what's going on. On the back, we don't have RF. This was Japanese, so that was less likely anyway. But we do have S-Video and composite and that expansion port as well. And this one has a removable power lead in the form of a clover leaf, which is good because it's quite annoying that these have fixed cables, because both of these consoles both have fixed cables. It's quite annoying. This one is in fact still plugged in, but it's kind of wired into my my cabinet system, and I didn't want to take it apart. This is my daily driver, although it may be the FZ10, so who knows. Yeah, so this again has a very similar to the Panasonic. Front loader with two quite. Well, these are slightly nicer, I guess, because they're more mutely coloured. And on the back, we have similar connection, but no S-Video. But we do have the RF and the composite and the expansion port. Yeah, they're although these are slightly bulky and also heavy, I like them. They're really nice machines. I really like the FZ10 though. The FZ10 I think is a stylish looking console. Ironically, Gold Star did one called a Try in Japan, which is slightly nicer design than this one. I wouldn't mind getting hold of one of those, but they are very hard to get hold of. But yeah, I think they're nice looking machines, and they've got a fairly good selection of games, especially obviously because, like I said, a few franchises started on there, and a couple of franchises did pretty well. So I'll take a look at some of those now. Oh, before I go, actually, I forgot about the controllers. I need to do that. So yeah, I've got one from each of the machines. So I've got a Panasonic and a Gold Star controller. They're fairly, simple controllers. They're a lot like PC ones, actually. A cross between PC ones and Mega Drive ones, maybe. Yeah, 3 buttons, although you could get more buttons than them. But also 2 shoulder buttons as well. But they've got some interesting features. So. Sorry, wire trapped. So if you look on this one for a start, it's got a headphone and volume, so you can have the sound coming through here, which is pretty cool. And also all these consoles, which I didn't point out, silly of me really. If you look, there's only one controller port. Now, obviously the PC Engine only had one controller port, and you had to use a multi-tap, but these have a more interesting way of doing that. So each controller has this little port here, which if we take it off, it's got a controller port in it. So if we get the lead from this one, we can plug that in there. So now if you're sitting on the settee with a friend, your controllers are next to each other. Which I think is a really cool feature, because they reasoned, quite rightly, that if you're playing games with someone else, then the chances are you're going to be sitting like in a similar area, rather than each of you sitting the same distance from the console. It makes sense, and it's quite a cool little feature. And it also meant you could chain multiple controllers together, and a few games took advantage of that with multi-player options. But yeah, I just thought that was a cool idea. I completely forgot to talk about it. So here we are. Now we're going to go to some games. And here we are with some games. Apologies, by the way, if you hear a fan in the background. It is incredibly hot here in the UK at the moment. And if I do not have the fan on, I will surely melt. So, again, apologies. I'll try to remove as much of it as I can. But you may well hear it. I'll try and talk over it anyway. So yes, the first game, I think anyone can probably recognise this. It's Street Fighter. It's specifically Super Street Fighter, but it's Street Fighter. Right, well, let's get straight into a battle. I mean, everyone knows Street Fighter, surely. This is, right, okay, we've got selected game speed. I think it's one of the additions. Select 2. And hey, let's go for Ryu, why not? Ryu, wherever you want to pronounce it. It doesn't matter, really. And yeah, the presentation is pretty close to the arcade. I mean, at this point, of course, there have been good versions on a few platforms. But yeah, it's... Oh. I'm not entirely sure what Zangief is doing there. Is he crushing my head? I don't know. Now, obviously, this is... It doesn't have 6 buttons. It has 5. But you can do most of what you need to do. Oh, I'm not doing well. And the controller's pretty good, to be fair. Oh, that's... Yeah, okay. I would love to blame either the controller or this version of the game for what just happened. I can't. That is literally my ability in this game. Oh, I'm pressing the wrong button, that's why. I need to do this. There we go. And then that. There, look at that. We can fire some special moves. Oh. Oh, now he's, yeah. Okay, he's, I think I made him mad. Oh, come on. I did a special. How do you block that? Well, at least it wasn't quite so hopeless. I think we should very quickly move on to another game. And yes, here we are with Rebel Assault. Now, this is actually a PAL game, and I'm playing it on a Japanese 3DO. There is no region locking. There is no, in fact, any kind of locking whatsoever. So, yeah. Although some of the older ones do have issues with CDRs as the drives start to die a little bit. Shouldn't be a problem here because this is a genuine game. Nice little bit of a space battle there. Let's get out of that though. Right, so let's start a new game. This is a pretty good game, I think. It's not the greatest Star Wars game ever made, but it's fun. And you get a good idea of what the 3DO is capable of, although... Yeah, cutscenes are cutscenes. Okay, we can't skip. I just wonder if we could skip. We can't. Literally, you just got to stay alive. And I just am not very good at it at all. Mind you, that said, I'm doing better than I ever have done in this game, so I've normally hit a wall at least once by now. 2 wall hits though at this stage of the game, that's pretty good for me. Anyway, definitely time to move on to another game. Here's our final game. Yes, it's Doom. The 3DO got a conversion of Doom. I personally think a very good conversion of Doom. It's not the fastest game ever, I'll admit, but it works well. Yeah, the window is quite small. But you know what? This is even faster than I remember it being. So I even take back it's not the fastest version. Yeah, the window's a little bit small, maybe, but you know, a few versions got even smaller windows than this. So it moves well. The graphics are good. I mean, you know, we're saying that about a game which had been out at this point on the PC for quite a while. Maybe we can strafe. Oh, the fire button is, admittedly. I'm sure I'll work it out though. Oh, there's the fire button. Right, there's the open button. There you go, and all the graphics look nice enough. They're not too muddled, and
low res. Yeah, it's a pretty good conversion, I would say. One of the better ones, certainly. And if you enjoy Doom, there's definitely a lot to enjoy in this. Yeah, no, you know what? If I carry on, I'm just going to play Doom for the rest of this thing, and that's not how we should be doing it. Anyway, that's the 3DO. It was a fascinating period of gaming history, and you can kind of... Yeah, if it had worked, then it would have been really interesting. Obviously, this model was something that Philips also kicked around with CDI, where they would allow other hardware manufacturers to license it, but in the end they decided against it and just made their own machines. But for all its drawbacks, there are some definite interesting ideas of doing hardware this way. In fact, it's very reminiscent, of course, of MSX in Japan and around the world, really. The common hardware platform with lots of manufacturers making hardware that can play the same software. And it's, that guy just literally walked past me without shooting me. Never mind. Oh, no, he's shooting me. Okay. So, yeah, it was interesting. And it came up with some quite nice machines as well. I really do love my FZ10. I'm really glad I bought them. Anyway. If you like the video, please hit like. If you really like the video, please hit subscribe. If you didn't like the video or you have something else to say, then please leave it in the comments below. See you next time.